about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOCDALI. So many of us have been watching this story. 7 members of Iran's national women's football team have refused to board a flight home over fears of execution. By football, we're meaning soccer. And there's a 13-member squad that have been subjected to death threats because while the Iranian national anthem was playing at their first game of the Asian Cup, they refused to sing the anthem. This was played in Australia 2 days after the war began, when the U.S. and Israel launched strikes against Iran. 5 of the players, including the captain, had been able to escape. Their handlers sought asylum on Monday night, and Tony Burke, Australia's Home Affairs Minister, confirmed that the women had been granted humanitarian visas and taken to a safe house. 2 more sought refuge at the last minute before their flight from Sydney to Iran via Kuala Lumpur. And from what we understand, Australia has said they will give everybody asylum if they wanted it. Gulnoush Khosravi, a 24-year-old winger, is believed to have refused to board at the departure gate, where activists protesting against her departure had gathered. One demonstrator held up a sign written in Farsi saying, "Gulnoush, your mom said to stay." So her mom told her to stay. Now, you know, a big concern that many of these players have is what's going to happen to their family if they don't come back. Although people are unfortunately suspecting that even if they did come back, not only would they be killed, but their family as well. Mohadese Zolfi also requested and received asylum before the flight, according to Iran International. As the remaining players boarded the plane, some were seen crying. One had earlier been seen dragging her teammate onto the transport of the plane. Now, the team has been nicknamed Iran's Lionesses. They have been described as, quote, wartime traitors by Iranian state media. They have pushed for harsh punishments because they very publicly didn't sing the Iranian national anthem. They stood there in silence. So it was interpreted as an act of protest. See, I sing the Star Spangled Banner whenever, you know, but in America, you aren't necessarily supposed to sing it. There's a singer, you know, oh, say does that Star Spangled Banner, and, you know, while they're singing it, we're supposed to sit there, you know, and our hands over our heart. You know, I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, so we have the Vegas Golden Knights. So let me see. Keep proof through the night. And instead of at night, we say nights, you know, for Vegas Golden Knights. But you know, that's what people do. They love the Star Spangled Banner. They love the Golden Knights. It's a beautiful thing. I'm fine with it. But we don't necessarily sing along. I'll sing along because I like to sing, unless it's not in my key, or unless somebody goes, you know, you're really off key. Can we just hear the singer, please? But apparently in Iran, you're supposed to be singing the national anthem, I guess. So for them to stand there quietly and respectfully, that was a sign of being a traitor, according to Iran. So, or a sign of a protest. So this made headlines around the world. Their families now have been threatened and some relatives detained. According to USA Today, Skylar Thompson, deputy director of HRA, a U.S.-based Iranian human rights organization, warned that the returning players risk interrogation, travel ban, suspension from sport, or other forms of retaliation by the regime. But their punishment could be more extreme. One source told Iran Wire that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was planning to arrest the players and put them on trial for charges such as cooperation with a hostile state and propaganda against the regime. Well, that could come with death. The choice of some players to remain also brings risks because now their families are going to get questioning, harassment, other forms of pressure. And sadly, Iranian authorities, according to this source, have historically used pressure on the family members of activists, dissidents, and critics as a means of coercion and deterrence. So the players who have been granted asylum include Captain Zara Ganbarim, Fatame Pasandide, Zara Sarbali, Atafe, Rama Zanzadeh, and Mona Hamoudi. So their decision to flee was prompted by a message smuggled out of Iran via Turkey from a player's family telling the woman to stay. So, President Trump got mad that Australia allowed the rest of the team to go back to Iran, saying they will most likely be killed. He said, don't do it, Mr. Prime Minister, give asylum. The U.S. will take them if you won't. Now, we heard that the country is offering asylum. 5 have been taken care of and the rest are on their way. I don't know if any ended up back on the plane back to Iran. I thought some did. But this is frightening. And then you wonder if any future teams are going to be allowed to compete in the World Cup and Olympics, etc. This regime has to go. And when you hear reports of these women getting raped when they're detained, getting raped in jails, they look scared. And this is the world we live in. We think that, okay, we have rights and, we're able to protest and we're able to blow whistles and ICE agents and America offers that freedom, which I still think is ridiculous. You don't be, poking the dragon, especially when they're on a mission and they're in an operation and they're armed. But I think Americans get really lackadaisical going, well, look, we're free. I could, walk along the street and, I could say what I want to and I'm not, but no. These ladies didn't sing. They stood there during the Iranian national anthem, like a lot of other countries do. They stand there solemnly, but because they didn't sing, it was a sign of protest, and now they're in trouble. And when one family member said, stay there, don't come back, because it's safer to stay in Australia. I don't blame them for wanting. I don't blame anybody for wanting to leave. So we'll see what happens. I just hope they're safe and their families are safe. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
At Hotshot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hotshot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hotshot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hotshot Secret, powered by science.
Hi guys, Dr. Dahlia here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping, addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdahlia.com. Check it out.
Let's face it, guys, we're living in times where the truth is becoming more suppressed and censorship is increasing at an alarming rate, especially on social media platforms. It's Clyde, and I want to tell you about a safe and secure digital playground we put together just for you. It's aftermath.media. You get access to thousands of Ground Zero archives and podcasts, along with our private social media groups with your basic membership starting at only $7 a month. Each subscription includes tech support, access to the RSS feeds, along with our own chat room and Telegram channel. In addition, the premium membership includes research study groups, webinars, a document and movie library, a live video stream of Ground Zero, a monthly Zoom chat with me, and other bonus content. Be sure to check out our yearly specials as well. Sign up today while you're thinking about it. Sign up at aftermath.media. Again, that's aftermath.media.
We're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So this meme made me laugh. I'm sure many of you guys have seen it. It has come in so many different forms, but the meme is entitled, "This is why young people in America are so confused." So it has a picture of Biden, right? And it says competent. It has a picture of Ocasio-Cortez saying genius. It has a picture of Michelle Obama saying oppressed. It has a picture of Elizabeth Warren saying Native American. It has a picture of Greta Thunberg saying expert. It has a picture of fire saying mostly, let me see if I could read that. Oh, mostly peaceful. There's a picture of Bill Gates saying scientist, George Floyd saying hero, Kamala Harris saying African American, and then I forget the deputy in Biden's administration who was transgender. The meme says that it says woman. And this meme is going around saying this is why young people in America are so confused. And I know a lot of people are laughing about it and all that, but this is, one thing I want to touch upon, with some of these memes that we're seeing is I mean, the first and foremost, the idea that people are claiming they're experts or scientists or public officials or doctors, or that's a concern. I've been asked to comment on certain things, and I'll say, look, I haven't done the research. I can't necessarily answer that. I'm not an expert. With Obamacare, I tried to read the whole bill. You couldn't. And I don't think anybody can claim that they technically read the whole bill of the Affordable Care Act back in 2009. Because when you read it, it keeps alluding to sections in other bills. So unless you're at the Library of Congress or unless you have access to each and every bill that it's referring to and have access to that text, you're not technically reading it. I mean, so when I get asked about certain things, I have to say, look, I can't say for sure. It's one of those things where, if I haven't done my research, I need to, and that's what I would, by the way, if I was, let's say, a celebrity and let's say, who knows, and, they go, okay, yeah, thank you for being here at the Emmys or at the Oscars. How do you feel about X, Y, and Z? If I was a celebrity, I would say, look, I haven't done the research. I've been, sadly, concentrating on my family and this and this and this, or just like with the Olympics, I'm just here for my sport. I haven't seen all sides, and I'd like to give an answer once I've been able to do more research. But that's not what they do. These stars and these celebrities and these people say, yep, this is what I am. Is Bill Gates a scientist? I don't know. Some people may think in theory, yes. Is Greta Thunberg an expert? Is Ocasio-Cortez a genius? And I know these memes are making fun of things, etc. And I don't like, seeing people insulted, but it is confusing people. It's people get confused because they start to then listen to their computer or listen to their AI. I mean, the biggest issue I have now in medicine is how to teach patients when they're getting the wrong information online. And if it's not a doctor, it's not a nurse practitioner, it's not a PA, I'd like you to double check your work. Yeah, but it's a computer. That's better than humans. This is confusing younger generations. When Biden was struggling, I understand that the Democrats were in a pickle. I get that. That's not easy. Because, but are you a Democrat or are you an American? If you're an American, you would say, look, our president's struggling. It's obvious. Honestly, they shouldn't have supported him. We saw this even during the campaign in 2020. But look, he wins. They're happy, but they really, that I think hurt Democrats so much, where people are getting behind going, oh, yeah, I've spoken to him, and he is so succinct and clear and competent, and he is sharp, and he is on his game. And we're like, say what? And I was with Steve Sanchez and Alan Stock, and we were, I guess, there for like a live commentary on the debate as it happened, when the debate was between Trump and Biden, and it was so helpful for the Republican side, because the Republicans have been saying Biden has been incompetent for the longest time, and the average person saw it. But then right afterwards, CNN and was it Van Johnson? I forget who, finally called it. And my guess is somebody gave the thumbs up. Somebody in the Democratic Party said, look, we only have a few months. If we're going to do something now. It's obvious he's not going to win. I give the media the permission to go ahead and call it. And then they finally started doing that. People don't have trust in you. But it helped Trump, because Trump had been saying that Biden wasn't all there. And people are like, no, we don't believe him. We don't believe him. MSNBC and CNN says Biden's fine. That's all deceptive editing and AI. And no, he's fine. And then they're like, well, Trump is right. He's not wrong about everything. And so I think, I knew that the debate would change things. I just didn't think it would, then mean we then had to, I guess, deal with Kamala Harris. I mean, I knew it meant, I always thought that he was going to resign, then promote Kamala Harris. So he got credit for making the first woman president, giving Kamala Harris a chance to show her stuff. And then Kamala Harris goes into the 2024 election. That's what I thought. But apparently there was a fight, or there was bad blood between them, reportedly. And he didn't want that to happen. So he remained behind closed doors or in Delaware for the rest of the presidency. Not a good move, not good at all. So going back to who are our experts, now I know people are saying, but Dr. Dahlia, look at RFK Jr. Is RFK Jr. an expert on vaccines? Is he an expert on health? And I like RFK Jr., but I have always said, especially after the Obamacare debacle with Kathleen Sebelius, somebody running the Health and Human Services, I really think should be in the medical profession. That's just me. However, RFK Jr. has surrounded himself with very good medical personnel. And the idea of, can we just make sure that we aren't dealing with side effects? Can we ensure that everything we're recommending is safe? Can we get the crap out of the food? Can we tell companies that they have to show their ingredients so that people know if they are getting food preservatives or things that could be cancer causing? By the way, that was started in California. California spearheaded that. But it finally took RFK Jr. to have that on a federal level. So I like him. Do I prefer a doctor in that role? Yes. But, he's, if he's, using science and he's saying, look, we're going to look into this. We're going to look into I'm comfortable with that. What I also really liked about him, which I'm hoping still happens, is where there's that transparency of, if parents want to look something up, they have access to the studies. See, right now there's a lot of paywalls. Even for me, if I want to look up a study, a paywall comes up. I have to pay to read that article. And mind you, these journals are allowed to make money. They are. And I get that. People copy things all the time. I've had my books copied, and I understand that. I mean, there's, for them to publish, they need to make money. But summaries of studies and things like that are hopefully neutral and not politically biased, patients need to have access to that data so they know. I don't want medicine politicized. And so, humans are supposed to be smart enough to tell this person isn't smart. This person is not an expert. But we give so much quan and stock to these celebrities. I mean, if Brad Pitt walked into my studio and said, "Hi, Dahlia," I'm like, "Hi, Brad. The sky is actually purple." I'm like, "I believe anything you say." And I'm a doctor. What? Brad Pitt, fine. You're handsome. I'll take whatever you say. And so I get it. And that's why, these political parties are trying to use these stars to come out and say things. But do they really know what they're talking about? Yeah, I mean, these movie stars that got their jobs, became rich, or were relatives of other stars, do you really know what it's like to have to work fast food? To have to wait tables like I did? To have to sleep in your car? To not have a place to live? To scramble around to try to find a roommate or try to pay, for college? So, no, celebrities are not experts. That's an interesting meme. 1-877 Duck Dolly.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
All right. We are back at the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen, and Daniel, our producer. So I get asked by a lot of physicians and nurse practitioners and PAs, how are we doing telemedicine? How am I diagnosing prostatitis? How am I diagnosing colorectal cancer? How am I diagnosing melanomas? And a very common question I get is, how am I doing gynecology on telemedicine? I have tried to take a speculum and put it through that USB port. It doesn't work. But now that telemedicine is one of the most popular methods of people getting their medical care, it is, drawing the question, what's going on, what's happening, et cetera. And so, we first need to understand what the diagnosis of a virtual encounter is, or a telemedicine visit. So a telemedicine visit used to be, although we used to not get paid for it, but I would be at my office till 10, 11 o'clock at night, calling patients back, and it would be giving medical advice or providing their prescription or comment or giving them their results over the phone. I'd send the code, insurance wouldn't pay for it. I did it all for free. I did a lot for free. It was exhausting, but that's kind of the way it was. Now it's, if your physician, or your medical provider is going over the labs, et cetera, and they're doing it over the phone, and it is saving you that visit where you don't have to wait and come in. People love it. It's great. It's a fantastic adjunct to medicine. But then you have other individuals who have not seen a gynecologist in years. They go, I technically don't need a pap smear for every 5 years. So they'll call telemedicine companies saying, I have, and there's either your doctor that can provide telemedicine, or there's companies that have never met you that will provide telemedicine services for certain medical conditions where you could call and then you could get care online. And so many patients, if they call their gynecologist hasn't seen them in 4.5 years. And they say, look, I'm having vaginal pain, or I'm having discharge, or I'm having bleeding after sex. Oftentimes that gynecologist is going to say, come in and get seen, because that's how we've always done it. So they may instead go to a telemedicine company because they could call, get a doctor or a medical provider that day, that hour, and then get care. And so, how the telemedicine doctor does it is they have guidelines. Many of these companies have guidelines, and I work for a few companies. And so the guidelines say, look, if the person has had a history of yeast infections, they've had they're reporting the classic symptoms. You've kind of ruled out other things. You could go ahead and treat them for a yeast infection. You could go ahead and treat them for bacterial vaginosis. You could go ahead and give them birth control. Now, I know a lot of doctors who have never done telemedicine are like, ooh, well, wait a second. How do you know they don't have a clotting disorder? You're going to give them birth control? How do you know what their blood pressure is? Because how we were trained is you got to check their blood pressure. If they have high blood pressure, you might want to avoid an estrogen compound. We've been, so I know some people, but nowadays, especially with progesterone products over the counter, things have gotten a lot more loose or flexible or liberal as it pertains to people getting birth control. Getting testosterone over the phone? No. If it's a controlled substance, you can't. A lot of doctors say, are you giving testosterone? No, most telemedicine companies won't allow that unless you're with the primary care side or because, again, some of these are controlled substances. So that might not happen. But if somebody, let's say, has an abscess or a tear, or I always recommend they get seen. Now some medical providers will say, well, you know what? Here's a cream, here's an antibiotic. If it doesn't get better, then go and get seen. But for some of us, especially with a lot of the guidelines, they're like, no, this is something beyond what we're allowed to do. So for those of you that are, kind of looking at, do I want to practice on telemedicine? You might want to look up the guidelines and see that you're comfortable with what they're saying. For the majority of these companies, their guidelines are valid, and it does make sense. If somebody is saying they have strep, but they're coughing, they have multiple other symptoms, it's acting viral, you can't really call it strep, especially without a test. Now, telemedicine is going to get better in terms of accuracy once we have more at-home tests. So one thing that has really concerned me has been the flu season, where we had people who were given Tamiflu for flu. I saw patients giving Tamiflu in September of every year. And then even before flu season hits, because flu season's usually October through May. But yeah, there could be some cases, but nobody tested. And so there's been concerns that some people might have COVID, pneumonia, something else, but they call up saying, I have flu. That's what I have. Give me my Tamiflu. And I remember one year the FDA said, guys, no, we're running out of Tamiflu. Only give it to people who tested positive or severe cases like the ER or in the hospital. And so, but now we have over-the-counter flu tests. So that's fantastic. So you could test and then upload the picture. And so, should somebody with flu have an exam, a heart exam, a lung exam? Absolutely. And I still tell people, I know you tested positive for flu, still get seen. But if it can start you on the medication and reduce complications, I will. But still get seen because flu has complications, stroke, heart disease, pneumonia. So, there's limitations. Somebody calling in with prostatitis. They go, I have prostatitis. So the first thing I ask is, have you ever had it before? They're like, oh, yeah, I had it lots of times. The doctors just give me antibiotics. You do get antibiotics for prostatitis, but oftentimes they will also check your PSA. They'll want to make sure it goes down. And they're also going to want to go, why do you have prostatitis? Is it because you have prostate cancer? Is it because of something else? So do you have a urologist? Oh, no, I didn't need one. The urgent care just gave me medicine. So now I'm calling you guys, just give me medicine. So for something like that, I recommend they get seen. Because, if you're in your 60s and you're having prostatitis or pain in that area, we have to make sure you don't have cancer. So there's an argument that everybody who calls telemedicine should still be seen in person. Because I know a lot of doctors are very frustrated. They're like, wait a second here. We were trained where you have to be examined. Yeah, even if you're calling for a UTI, we get the urine sample. We send it out. We check your kidneys. We also check to make sure it's not an STI. And they're not wrong. We got in trouble. We got reamed in school. Reamed. If at all we did anything halfway and we did not do the thorough exam and look beyond. I mean, look how I had a patient who came into me in the ER going, I have a UTI. I don't need a room. I don't want to take up any space. I just need antibiotics for UTI. She had some inflammatory cells on the urine, but because she was really, really nauseated, when we gave her nausea medicine, she started to have some shortness of breath. She actually had a heart attack the night before. But when she came in the next day, she was feeling off, so she thought it was a UTI. So she's telling us she had a UTI. We do an EKG. She had a heart attack the night before, and she was now having her second one, the aftershock, if you will. So I tell everybody who does telemedicine, get yourself checked out. Make sure the diagnosis is correct. I keep telling you about that patient that came into my office years ago saying I have asthma, wanting an inhaler, and she actually had a tumor on the heart. Nobody ever did the research to see did she really have asthma. They just kept giving her refills of her inhaler, and she actually had a tumor on the heart. So, these are things that what's really good about the telemedicine aspect of things is people who don't have an access to a doctor or a medical provider can talk to one. And I got to tell you, many of them did not think they were having a heart attack or appendicitis or a fracture. And so they talk to us and we say to do that. And some people, they get some of their medical issues, the eczema flare-up, psoriasis flare-up, they could get refills. They could get things done temporarily. But if somebody is using telemedicine primarily as their only medical care, that could be a problem because they're missing things. I had somebody call up saying that he thinks he has melanoma. It was his kid that noticed the mole. And I'm thinking, why didn't your doctor pick it up? But if people aren't going to the doctor, the medical provider, they're not going to get their skin looked at. So it's great, but yes, there are limitations to what we could do online. 1-877-Doc-Dolly, don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did, and just maybe someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
We're back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Doc-Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. So I wanted to talk about this story when I had a little bit more information as what happened, but I know many of you have been concerned about what happened to Alexander LaMorie, a 25-year-old male with autism who was killed by police. I believe this happened in Baltimore. And if you do have family members who have autism or family members with dementia, a big fear we have is, what if, God forbid, their actions are misconstrued, or if they do something that could unfortunately cause a first responder or a police officer to feel that they are in jeopardy. And we have such a lack of understanding of the neurodiverse community that I hear from people all the time. God, that person is mean. That person is rude. That person is racist. That person is, and I take one look at the person, I go, they have autism. They're not going to have the same filters. Nobody should. You don't want anybody to be saying things that are anti-woman, or like an example of somebody with autism, let's say maybe higher functioning autism, and I've said that, is, you come into the office and people are like, gosh, I love that dress. That's a great dress. Talking to dress, and then somebody with high functioning autism will be like, I can see your nipples. And then everybody's like, oh, why they? Well, he's not wrong. You're wearing something that's plunging. They could see, through the shirt. It's so they're not going to be like, okay, in society, you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't say this, you can't say that. And so many people feel them rude. There's somebody who's a really, really close friend, and every now and then he says something that's kind of insulting. And you're like, what? Is that a dig? Is that, no, he's probably on the spectrum. It's just something that, and so for me, having extended family members with autism and having worked with patients who have autism or people with dementia, I understand. In fact, there was a family member who had snapped at my husband years ago. And this was a family member he really, really loved. And he's like, I can't believe that was so mean. And I go, well, she's probably, having dementia. Like, what? I go, whenever you have somebody who never says a mean or cross word, and then all of a sudden you're, going, oh, that was odd. Their brain is changing. Just take a deep breath. Don't get mad at them. It's just, we don't judge a book by one page, right? So I understand why people get shocked. Well, in this particular case, and again, I'll probably talk more about it later in the week, but from what I understand, Alexander LaMorie was in an apartment complex that is for individuals with disabilities. I believe it's called Patuxent Commons. And he was, this housing complex allowed people who, I guess, are having difficulty living on their own. It's a 76-unit building, and they provide housing instability affecting low-income adults with disabilities like autism and other things. And this is being reported by the Baltimore Banner. Well, apparently there was a call, and I don't have a lot of information, but after midnight on Sunday, officers responded to Patuxent Commons. It's the 6400 block of Freetown Road. They received a report of a man threatening to harm himself. When they got there, they saw LaMorie holding a knife. Officers opened fire when LaMorie approached them holding the knife and disregarded commands to drop the weapon. He was declared dead shortly after police had attempted life-saving measures. And so I believe family had said in the past, like I said, I don't have all the details, that, they were concerned about his mental health but they say 80% of all county police officers are certified in crisis intervention. It requires 40 hours of training on how to safely and effectively interact with people who have mental health issues and intellectual disabilities. But here's the thing, which is kind of difficult. And I have family members who were police officers and in the military. When you're trained, and I have not been a police officer, and God bless them, but if somebody is coming at you with a weapon, you only have milliseconds. In fact, I think they did a study where somebody was coming to at a police officer with, and I'm not saying the suspect in this particular case was truly coming after them, but there was a study that showed that if somebody is coming at you with a knife and you shoot, they could still stab you. Before that bullet stops them, they could still get to you. And because I think there was a case where an officer fired multiple shots and the suspect had a knife and was lunging at them. And somebody said, well, why do they have to fire multiple shots? No, because and they did a study and they looked at how the technically somebody lunging can still get to you and stab you. And so, officers are trained, obviously, to, try to save their lives. And so what do you do when you have a neurodiverse population that doesn't freeze when they're told to freeze, that don't put the weapon down? What if they don't understand that, or they're shocked? They see police officers and they see a gun. They've never seen that before. And so they freeze, or they panic and then they start walking towards you. This is a bad situation. It's frightening. And unfortunately, these officers, are always being shot at and stabbed and people trying to run them off the road. And I mean, we see this all the time, that, the first thing they're going to be thinking about is somebody is lunging at them, and if they were called under the pretext of there's a threat and somebody has a knife and can hurt others. And, police officers' job is to respond and to ensure nobody gets hurt. So one thing that might, I mean, people say, well, what about tasers? Maybe they don't have to use lethal force. Can they use tasers or something? But if you have somebody driving a car at you, if you have somebody pointing something at you, and I really do believe that law enforcement is looking at a variety of different types of weapons that won't, because usually with stun guns, there's a fixed length, to the electrode, to the I forget what they call that. And so if somebody is far away, to have the range of something that's non-lethal, I believe law enforcement is looking at that, and there's things in the works. But right now, if somebody has a knife, and so what do you do if somebody's neurodiverse? How do you tell instantaneously when you have seconds? It's hard to tell. And somebody neurodiverse, even though the majority of them are just sweet and they're brilliant, they're smart, they wouldn't hurt a fly. There are some individuals who have been on the spectrum that have killed. And I don't know what the answer is yet. And again, I want to look more into this. Of course, there are, many now concerns. Why did they have to use lethal force? Could there have been another way they could stop somebody who they felt was coming at them with a knife? I remember I was in my CCW class and, my husband's like, don't be stupid. Somebody's coming at you, you got to shoot them, in the chest. And I'm like, no, I'm a physician. I'm going to want to probably shoot them in the leg, or no, it doesn't work that way. You don't have time to try to miss a major artery. If somebody's coming at you, you have milliseconds. And it's frightening because these officers, their lives are always, the first person that ever attacked an officer and tried to kill him now ruined it for everybody because police officers are always in jeopardy. But now we have another case of somebody who either had neurodiverse diagnosis or dementia or something who people thought was a threat, and then they end up being killed when he really needed mental help. He needed mental health care. So it's a shame. I pray for the family. And, we'll talk more about this later. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.